you really don't need a title to be a leader. You truly can take that on your own and say, hey, like this is something I'm taking ownership of and I'm moving forward.
Welcome to the official CultureCon podcast, where we explore how work actually works.
We're your hosts, Zach Blumenfeld
and Nick Lombardino.
Whether you're leading a team, shaping culture, or just passionate about making work more meaningful, you're in the right place.
Each episode will bring you stories, insights, and bold ideas from people who are building better workplaces and better work experiences.
The official CultureCon podcast starts now.
Dr. Julia Wiener is a proactive and collaborative team expert known for blending analytical rigor with visionary leadership. As co-owner of a manufacturing and e-commerce company recognized in Inc. magazine's top 5,000, Julia helped grow the business from the ground up into an international enterprise, shipping tens of thousands of packages monthly and employing over 300 people before its acquisition by a Fortune 500 company in 2019. Today, as owner of JW Strategies, she partners with executive teams to drive leadership development, focusing on organizational structuring, change management, culture improvement, and executive coaching. Julia brings to her work a strong work ethic, unwavering integrity, and a commitment to energizing others and exceeding expectations. Based in Allen, Texas, Julia is a devoted wife and mother of two. She serves as vice president of the board of Attitudes and Attire and is a longtime board member at Common Good Medical, two nonprofits aligned with her passion for empowering women and supporting underserved communities. Julia holds a PhD in organizational leadership, an MBA, and a bachelor's degree in business administration, along with an executive coaching certification from Brown University. Dr. Julia, you started a company and grew it over to 300 employees, which landed you on Inc. magazine's top 5,000 fastest growing companies. Can you walk us through your entrepreneurial journey and maybe share some reflections on what that experience taught you about leadership and company culture as a whole?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question. My entrepreneurial journey has been, I feel like it started whenever I was a kid. I always wanted to own my own business. I always wanted to learn about businesses. But when I got out of college, I went to the corporate world and stayed there for 10 years, which is where I learned a lot of the foundations of leadership and company culture. And my husband, who really got bit by the entrepreneurial bug, he started the company that we founded and sold. He originally started it with two other partners, and we grew it like in our garage. I was still working for the corporate world and kind of providing the stability for he and I. We didn't have kids yet. And he was off, doing startup stuff. And I was just doing startup stuff in the evenings. And once we got going and we thought we were going to be in retail, and we had like a couple of retail stores, and we quickly pivoted to wholesale and got into the wholesale business. And that's when things really started to flow. So I would say one of the things that I've really learned is agility, is being able to pivot quickly. I say that because when we started our business, we thought we were going down one path, and then it quickly changed into another path. And if we would have held tight to that original mission, we wouldn't have sold. We wouldn't have been as successful. But agility, we were able to quickly see the writing on the wall and quickly move to wholesale on this particular instance. But there's so many instances of that throughout our time in business. It was just being able to move quickly. And that's why I love the startup and kind of smaller, medium-sized business environment, because you can learn and use that and move. So that's kind of, I would say, the foundation of what I've learned as an entrepreneur.
Do you think, Julia, that, in kind of thinking about some of these best practices of growing and scaling a company, you mentioned agility, and I think of like the lean startup methodology of, failing quickly and experimentation. Like, what are your thoughts on how that plays a role in company culture in being able to maybe take on new initiatives or experimenting with new programs?
Oh, yeah. I love it. it's something that we ended up like formally creating a kind of fail fast program within our company. I created this program called Emerging Leaders. I actually kind of took it from my corporate world. And part of that program was giving people the space to fail and saying like, hey, why don't you go and work on this project? Kind of like we did like a Shark Tank kind of thing where they brought ideas to us, and the ideas that we thought, hey, let's run with these. And whoever fails, fails. Whoever succeeds in these succeed. We're just providing the space for it. And I think that kind of culture where you create space for failing and asking like, did you fail on this? If you did, that's great. What did you learn? That's what keeps people engaged and what keeps more innovation coming. When as leaders, we kind of flip it and we say like, I think there's this idea of like failing fast and moving on, but like we also have to learn too. We're not just failing just to fail, and who can fail faster, like the lean startup method. I think we do get that wrong sometimes, but we have to take a minute and take a beat to say like, okay, well, what did we learn? Well, how can we move forward? Amy Edmondson, she talks a lot about that, with the idea of like learning from these failures and making like smart failures. So that would be my take on, or that I would tell employers to take on, is that feedback.
Definitely. And I think of culture of innovation, definitely like fail fast. And what do we learn from that failure? I also love the pivot idea. And when I think pivot, I also think of that episode of Friends where they're on the stairs with the couch and Ross is yelling, pivot, pivot, pivot. Yes. When you think about the journey that you've been on and you're describing, did you have any like misconceptions about leadership or culture prior to kind of building this company?
Yeah, I did. I came from a corporate, a very structured hierarchical culture, Fortune 500 company. We had 40,000 people at this company I worked for. And from that, I learned about hierarchy, and I learned that, if you're a manager or a vice president or a president, then people should listen to you and you have the answers. What I learned in the startup world was that people from all over the company can have answers and can be collaborative members of this company. I learned that leadership doesn't just look like titles. And I know we say that a lot, but I saw it. Like I saw these people have titles, and some of them are really good leaders too, not taking that away from them. But people over here in the startup world where we didn't even have titles when we first started. We let people make up their own titles. So it was just like, whatever you want to be, director of ops. Okay, sure. At first. But then I learned that, wow, like you really don't need a title to be a leader. You truly can take that on your own and say, hey, like this is something I'm taking ownership of and I'm moving forward.
That's funny how often it's the case for when we get started with our own businesses, how these types of organizational structures or even titling in the beginning is just kind of like, right, is like whatever you want. And then there's this whatever you want to be. Right. And I think to a large extent, that's really important for the success of a small business, because not only is it empowering autonomy, but it's also giving people kind of like in some way, shape, or form, you're going to wear a lot of different hats, and you're going to have to help this company scale in a multiple of different ways. But then there's always that unique inflection point where the leaders of the company, like whatever that number is, 20 employees, 50 employees, 100 employees, where it's like, oh boy, I think we might need to start putting a little bit more structure and frameworks in place.
Well, oh yeah, that happened to us for sure. We had several employees come to us and say like, hey, I'm the director of operations. I looked out on payscale.com. I'm supposed to be getting paced, We're like, wait, you're not. Right. You're more like a coordinator, So, yeah. At first, it is fun for everybody to be whoever they want to be, the director of fun or whatever. But yeah, at some point, I don't know like you said, 20 or 30 employees, we had to start kind of putting some structure around that for sure.
And that's a really interesting inflection point too. Like, whatever that number is, like there's a point in time where your company culture is so close knit because it starts as such a small team. And typically there's a lot of abounding trust and collaboration among all team members in the early stages. And it's just, a lot of it's just by virtue of being a small team and kind of having this shared vision and these common goals that you're all driving towards. But then at some point you hit this magic number, whatever it is, where things start to feel like a little bit more siloed in some ways. And now like there are some more processes that are starting to impact one another's ability to collaborate easier or have a line of sight into what other people are working on. And so I'd be interested in learning, Julia, like what were some of those like, oh shit moments when you were starting to scale this company, you're getting more and more employees, where it's kind of like that light bulb moment where it's like, oh, I think we need to start thinking about this and that and the other thing. Like what were some of those reflections?
Yeah. There's so many. One that comes to mind though was when we had two business lines and we're merging them, basically merging two business lines together. And people didn't like each other. They were just mad that this was happening. They were mad that this was kind of like an internal merger, and they weren't working together. We had like two purchasing people that now needed to work together because we needed to take advantage of larger purchasing, things like that. And it really took a very strong leader. We actually hired one of our partners' brother out of the military. He was a lieutenant colonel, hired him out of the military, and he came in and really provided a lot of structure to everybody. But he really just was like, hey, like, we're going to just bring everybody together. We are going to work through this. And we brought him as our CEO, him being the CEO, he took it upon himself to say like, hey, we're bringing everybody together. We're not going to have this infighting. People are going to work things out with each other. And I mean, I think it takes a really strong leader to do something like that, and just to put it out there and just to say like, this is what's happening. And like you said, Nick, it's a little bit like you also have to be able to see that it's happening too. Sometimes we just get kind of, we're just, boiling in the water and we don't know that we're boiling, kind of thing. But he was able to come in and say like, hey, this is what's happening. I see it and we have to do something about it. And it worked out. It worked out really well. And the things that came from that kind of the strings that kind of came down from that were so many one-on-ones that weren't happening before, performance reviews that weren't happening consistently, feedback both ways that wasn't happening before. All of the things that sound very structured that you don't really do in a startup. We started putting some structure around it and it worked.
You just mentioned strings in your response, and I think that's a good segue into kind of fast forwarding to what you're up to now, because you have developed this framework, this culture strings framework, and we want to zero in on one particular element of this framework where you point to these unspoken signals that leaders can have. Can you share an example of just like a unintentional behavior that a leader may exhibit that can quietly shape company culture?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm basing this framework on the work of Shine, who is a very famous org culture theorist. And he talks about culture embedding mechanisms. And one of those is like how you reward people and how you punish people as well. But one of them is, for an example, we say as a team, we value teamwork. We value teamwork. That's written on the walls. It's teamwork. It's teamwork. But then when it comes to, let's say, a sales team, we don't, because that salesperson is going to get the commission because they did a great job. So that's an example of like, is it really a team around here or is it individual? And so the way that we reward, that's an example. One of the most subtle examples that I've seen is this. It's interesting because like, okay, so there's a CEO who jokes around with people and has a really great rapport with people and gives them a hard time and like you're ribbing him and we're, just having fun in the office. Well, he doesn't do that with everybody though. So people that are kind of on the outside of that, they kind of feel like, oh man, if I'm not getting kind of made fun of a little bit, then I'm not like doing a good job or I'm not on the inside. And so I think that's one of those areas where as a leader, we really do have to be cognizant of like the way that we're even just joking around with people and not joking around with someone else. It's hard. It's hard being a leader. Like I'm not going to say that it's not. But even little things like that can put people on the outside. And I hate that because I like joking around with people, especially if they're my friend. But as a leader, you really do have to have that 360, lens on to see, okay, well, how is this being perceived by someone else? Is this going to mess up someone else's performance?
Yeah, definitely. Those unintentional behaviors that you think you're just having a conversation, someone picks up in the corner like, oh, I'm not part of this crew or clique now, and not intentional at all, but just part of being the boss, the leader. When you think about other like misalignments like that, like between maybe a value that's on the wall or in the handbook and then like how we actually behave, anything that you've come across in your career where it's like that subtle misalignment in values and behaviors?
Yes. Yeah. And this one stands out. It's a company that I've worked with in my consulting firm in JW Strategies. This company, of course, won't name any names or anything, but this company, they had this idea that they were, respectful of everybody. Respect was one of their core values. However, women at the company didn't feel that way. They felt like they were not being respected. And when I talked to the CEO one-on-one about this, we found all of this out through an engagement survey. He just had no idea. He was just like, oh, well, I thought that we were doing a great job of respecting the women here in the workplace. And so we dug deeper and we came up, the people that I had done some interviews with, some really good examples of how women had been overlooked or how they weren't in meetings, being talked over and things like that. So I challenged the CEO to just sit back. Let's not do anything. Let's just sit back and watch and see kind of what people are talking about. And he noticed it. He did. And I hate to say that I was happy that these things happened again, but then he was able to notice that his this whole idea of like, we respect everybody. We, respect is one of our things, our core values, but it really wasn't being lived out every day. And he was able to see examples of it when he actually looked for it. And I think that's part of it is when you just have these blinders on and you're saying, that's not happening at my company, then you're right. It's not, because you're just not seeing it. But yeah, this CEO did a really good job of being perceptive.
I was going to say, kudos to that CEO for being receptive to it and then creating the space to have that qualitative, kind of doing his own qualitative research. Tell us about, like, when thinking about how to leverage data, both qualitative and quantitative, what have been some strategies or tools that you've used, whether through your own company or through your own client delivery, that has been like really pivotal and informative in helping kind of unearth maybe some of these unintentional behaviors that leaders are exhibiting?
Yeah, I love an employee engagement survey, and not to knock any of the wonderful engagement survey tools that are out there, because there are some really good ones. But I mean, we could just do a Google form. We can get a Google form together as far as tools are concerned and ask some really good questions, and we can customize that, and ask the questions that you would want to ask your employees. So that's a tool that I love. Another one is a particular survey tool. It's called the OCAI, the Organizational Cultural Assessment Instrument. And it is wonderful because what happens is people take the assessment as a company, and it tells you what type of culture you have today. And it's like 4 different culture categories. It's the clan culture, which is like that family oriented culture that we talked about with small startups usually. The hierarchy culture, which I see a lot in bigger companies. The market culture, which is a very fast paced, like just do it fast. We don't have to be right. We just got to be fast. And then the adhocracy culture, which is that innovative, just trying to always come up with something new and be at the cutting edge. So those are like the 4 culture types that are in the OCAI. And you take the survey, it tells you what kind of culture you have now based on these questions. But then what I really love is that you take it again and you change your mindset. You say, what would I like my culture to be in 5 years? Oh, you can do 2 years, but you take it again. And then what I really love, and I use this in my own practice, because we always have to have a starting point. And then we say, okay, well, where do we want to be? Maybe it's we're here now. We're in the hierarchical type culture where the approvals take forever and it just doesn't fit our business model. But we really want to be in the adhocracy, on the adhocracy side where we're innovative and we're moving. So what I like is looking at how do we get from here to here and seeing where are you now and where do you want to be. So that OCAI is a very good tool for something like that.
And is that when you have your like current state and then your desired future state, and there's that gap from getting from where you are now to where you want to be, is the recommendations on how to get there, does that come from the tool, or is that predicated on having like an expert like yourself come in and be able like, this is the bridge that we need to take?
A little bit of both. They're at the, well, I own like a copy of the tool. So yes, like it comes with me, an expert, but, there are online versions of the OCAI out there. And I do think that it comes with some like, a couple of bullet points of like, oh, okay, here's where you are. Here's where you want to be. These are some things you should do. But yeah, I think that, depending on how much money you have to invest in something like this, it is really helpful to have somebody walk you through like, okay, what are we going to do next to get to this point?
Yeah, it sounds like a super valuable tool. And I think one of the questions I hear a lot from our community is like, especially from startups, is, hey, I had this small company, but we grew super fast. So how do I scale my culture as I scale my company? And this seems like a good tool for that. But any other advice, since it seems like you answered that question, you scaled a company, you scaled your culture. What advice would you give to someone who's kind of in those shoes?
Yeah, I'm working with I'll be working soon with a client who's in those shoes right now, and the advice that he and I have been talking about is it's communication. It really is. That's what it boils down to, is communication. But taking time to train your leaders on how to communicate with people, especially when things aren't going well or when they have a bad message to give, or not a bad message, but an unfavorable message. Teaching people on how to communicate. I work with partners even to bringing them in to help with these kind of things. But it all boils down to that. I would also say there's this mistake I think I see with a lot of small business owners. They first start with telling everybody everything. They tell all the employees, because there are only 10 or 15 of them, right? So they're telling them everything about the business and all the profit margins and all the revenue and all the things. And it makes sense because you've got 10. So you've got to figure things out all together. But I think there comes a point, and kind of like what we talked about with those, with the job titles, there comes a point where you've got to kind of bring in your decision making, and everybody in the company can't help you make these decisions. There's got to be a board of directors, or there's got to be a trusted group of advisors that you lean on, to where you're not spreading out all of the decision making throughout the entire, now 50, 60, 100-person, company. It's hard to do. It really is. And that's something that I see, is that people keep using that same idea of like democracy. But now they've got 100 people, and it just slows things down.
It's like, it's well intentioned in the beginning. Like you said, it's, you have a small team and you want to share information to get to the common goal. And it's also like, I think they're probably trying to illustrate, like, we want to operate with being as transparent as we possibly can. But to your point, at some point in time, that might be creating more unnecessary overhead than good in being able to effectively scale your culture. Yeah, Zach, I love that question. And it's interesting. I'm going back to what you said a few minutes ago, Julia, when talking about with your own company, the moment in time where you like were merging business lines, and that was kind of like your oh boy moment. Interestingly, Zach and I learned, and I personally have not fact checked this at all, so people should do this before you listen to this statement as fact. I heard that the majority of the movement towards creating organizational culture as a business imperative was born out of this rapid, like in the 80s, apparently there was like this rapid market consolidation across multiple different industries. And there was so much mergers and acquisitions taking place. And so to your point earlier about having these two teams that just like didn't get along and didn't want to talk to one another, like apparently like this was happening nonstop throughout the 80s and early 90s. And that's when more of the art and the science got folded into, okay, what's going on from like a business performance perspective on how we can more effectively integrate these teams to create the right processes and communication channels and overall workplace culture where now we're in sync and we're in flow together. And I just thought that was really interesting. I had never really thought before about like, hey, what's the history of like how a lot of these best practices came into play. So people like Dr. Deming and some of these other early trailblazers for team performance kind of coming to fruition. So I just thought that was really interesting. That was kind of like your same moment.
So true. Yeah, I love learning about the history of culture too. I wrote a little bit about it in my dissertation, and it's just like I mean, there's so many theorists and you guys are probably going to be in those history books. Nick and Zach, you know,
the wrong side of history books, maybe.
Yeah. Where it's seriously because we're in a different type of culture now. And so I see like you were talking about like the 80s and 90s, but now I'm thinking, wow, we're in 2025 and 2030 and 2035. Like, what are we learning right now? I mean, post-COVID, like that changed a lot with organizational culture as well. So yeah, that is an interesting, another podcast, that you guys can look into for sure.
Yeah. That's a good point though. It's kind of like, I feel like the post-COVID era almost ended, and now we're in like the AI era, which we talked about in Vegas last year. Where do you think we'll be like a year from now, 6 months from now, when it comes to AI and how that affects the human aspect of work?
Oh man, yeah, I am optimistic. I've been optimistic about AI, and I think I'll remain optimistic until I see, something new. But I feel like it's elevating. It's elevating us because we're able to use AI for some of the work that is taking a lot of tedious time and hours. And now I can use those hours to do something else. I think in my personal life, I'll share a fun example. We're hosting some camp counselors at our home right now through our church. We signed up to be host families. And so there's 4 camp counselors here. And the church gave us a list of all the things that they like and dislikes and things like that. It was, 2 or 3 pages long. I'm not reading all of that. I'm putting that into ChatGPT. I'm telling it, this is what I want. I want to make some little welcome baskets for these four ladies. Read all of this, put it all together, and then let me execute, and I go off to the store. I get these cute little baskets. They're all happy. I saved myself an hour of looking through these likes and dislikes. Let AI do those things. That's the future for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great example too, is like, how can I take some of these small tasks, the busy work, give that to ChatGPT and allow me that time to maybe make a better basket for the counselors or a better project for work. Yeah.
Where I struggle is, and I vented to Zach about this, like this is a Nick problem that I'm about to profess. Like I've been using these tools so regularly for all the reasons that you just listed, Julia, that I feel like I'm becoming more and more addicted to productivity because of these tools. And so even though I'm like maximizing efficiency, I'm not taking enough like healthy separation from work. I'm like conditioning my brain is thinking to itself like, keep going, keep crushing, keep working, like things are humming, keep going. And then by the end of the day, even though I've gotten a tremendous amount of work done, I'm completely fried. And maybe too, like, I have no data to back this up, but I'm wondering if my critical thinking skills are somehow going down because I'm more reliant on these tools to do the thinking for me and like the immediacy of stuff coming back to me. So there's no question here. It's just a reflection that I've been ruminating on this, like how I need to do a better job of still leveraging these tools, but figuring out what the right balance is where I'm not becoming overly dependent or addicted to just feeling like I have to be extra productive every day.
Oh, sure. Oh, I love that. Thanks for sharing that reflection, because it is, I think a lot of us feel that way. We feel like, well, we can do it, so we should. We can be super productive, so we should. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And when Zach, you ask about the future. I mean, maybe there's more. There's more help around and more talk around these kinds of things, like Nick's talking about. Maybe that's part of an offering that a culture might offer to an organization or to a company. Like, hey, we want you to use AI. We want you to be productive. These are some things that we can help you with if you experience this, need for overproduction, and just calling those things out. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's almost like we think about mental health in the workplace, employee well-being, and how the effects of AI might influence that as well.
It's kind of funny, that like that cliche thing where like an interviewer asks you what your weaknesses are, and you're like, I work too hard. It's like, that's kind of what's reminding me of. Someone asked me, I'm too productive.
That's right.
All right. Well, as we wrap things up here, Julia, we have this one question that we like asking each one of our guests, which is, when you think about your own professional journey, even personal growth, is there one individual, past or present, that you just want to give a shout out to who has just left a lasting impression on you?
Yeah. I have so many, but I'm going to go with it immediately who popped in. And that is one of my mentors at that big company that I worked for. His name is Ken Smith. And he just took me under his wing. He was like 3 levels above, maybe 4 levels above me when I first started at the company. But he just took me under his wing. He saw something in me and mentored me and just told me like the unspoken things, people are saying this, but this is what they really mean when they say it. Like I remember him distinctly telling me, like, if you want to have a family and get married and do all these things, you've got to figure out how that affects your career, as a man or as a woman, and it's conversations like that, like real conversations that he had with me that were truly life-changing. To this day, I when I mentor younger people, I still say some of the things that he told me, and just kind of he opened the veil a bit and said, like, hey, this is what's really going on behind, and this is how it really is. I appreciated that.
I think now that Zach and I have asked this question a couple times, there is a common thread, which is, without an individual overstepping any personal, professional boundaries, there's something to be said for a mentor who's not afraid to have hard conversations with you, like the honesty and, of course, the integrity of the person coming forward. Like, that seems to be a really critical pillar of having somebody of influence in that mentorship role, is really being able to help make you think differently, and maybe sometimes going to uncomfortable scenarios, for lack of a better term. But okay, was it Ken Smith? Ken Smith. Shout out to Ken Smith for being such an incredible mentor. Well, Dr. Julia, thank you as always for being such an incredible friend, partner, collaborator. And at the time of this recording, we're just before CultureCon 2025 in Madison, Wisconsin. So can't wait to have you with us again in person. Just a few short weeks.
I cannot wait. I was just thinking, it's like a month from today.
Yeah.
I think we start August 6th or 7th.
Can you see the sweat beating down from our heads? Yeah.
Oh, you guys, it's gonna be awesome. People have already connected with me on LinkedIn saying, hey, I see you're at CultureCon. I'd love to connect when you're there. And I'm like, yes. So I love it. I cannot wait. CultureCon people are my people. Like when I came home from CultureCon West, I told my husband, I just met my people. These are the people right here.
Oh my gosh.
We love to hear that.
And Zach and I say it to ourselves, is just like, what did we do to deserve this type of community of people who are just like yourself, Julie, just like abundantly kind and curious and eager to want to connect and grow personally and professionally. So yeah, whatever we can do to create a little container for these types of people to get together, it's amazing. So can't wait to see you and appreciate you being on the podcast. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap on this episode of the official CultureCon podcast.
If you got something out of it, share it with a friend, teammate, or fellow culture geek.
And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Until next time.